There he is. Okay, now that everybody is back and settled, we're going to close out our executive session for litigation and move into our open session and start off with support services. Mark?
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you. Jen, are you with us? There she is. She's got 3 items to take care of.
Yeah, good morning, Commissioners, again. So the first one that I have, and I actually combined this into one briefing document to formally delete two departments within the general fund, which we did in the budget that we adopted this morning, and then 2 funds that we're no longer utilizing. So it's the murder expenditures department number 258 within the general fund, and then the motor pool department 305. So the murder expenditures that can be paid out of non-departmental, and that's where we budgeted it. And then the motor pool department can be paid for out of facilities. It was created for incidental items, and it really was unnecessary to have that department formed at all. So we consolidated that into the facilities department. And then the Beards Cove Reserve Fund 429, that is now going to be within Fund 412, the Beards Cove Fund. And Storm Drain System Development Fund 480. It was funded by a grant that was fully expended from Department of Ecology originally, and then the road fund contributed the rest of that funding that has continued in 480. So just a formality to move that into the road department. So this has all been ran through the audit committee, and we've talked about it in other budget workshops. So any questions on this one?
Not for me.
Not for me. I'm good with it.
All right, thank you. So we'll move that on to the December 20th action agenda for formal approval. And the next thing that I have is an amendment to the VSP, the Voluntary Stewardship Program that we have with Mason Conservation District. So we're getting additional funding for them for the Conservation District through the Washington State Conservation Commission. So this is just a formality to request approval. And I would ask that the chair sign this agreement, or Mark, either one. The amendment request is $50,405 to add to this agreement.
Mark, any thoughts on who the signatory should be?
I would be happy to sign if I had the authority to. So if you guys want to give that to me, then absolutely can.
Okay, commissioners, any issues with that?
None.
Yeah, me either.
Okay.
We shall do that.
Should we put it on the action agenda for Mark to sign then, or just have him sign? Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
All right.
And is that on the action agenda for tomorrow?
This should go on the 20th.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, that's all that I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Mary, talk about our career incentive pay policy.
Camera is working. So the career incentive for the AICP was originally briefed on the 28th, and based on your feedback, I wanted to rebrief with a little bit more information. Our policy, attempts to identify key licenses and certifications that are really essential to efficiency and cost savings in the organization. This specific certification fits the definition and evaluation criteria of professional certification as listed in the policy. It requires the certified party to demonstrate a specific level of competency in a specific function, passing an exam administered by an industry-specific credentialing organization, and there are continuing education requirements to retain this credential. I listed some benefits to the county in the briefing sheet, but really better recommendations to public officials, professional collaborators, and the public in the areas of planning. As we know, the county is growing and planning demands are going to increase, so this will help prepare us for current and future planning needs. And then we're also getting the benefit of increased credibility in this area of expertise. And then the budget impact is the same as last week with a $5,000 annually, which matches up with a professional certification as listed in the policy.
Commissioner Edelman, you're muted.
As he said, we've been briefed on this one before, and in the past, we've had other conversations. I'm supportive. Is it possible with the other commission to have it on tomorrow's agenda?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this from the beginning was an appropriate use of the policy, and I think staff did a good job at putting that together. So I was supportive last week. I'm supportive this week, and happy to move it to tomorrow's agenda if possible.
Okay, we got two. We're good to go.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Well,
But you will be bringing forward a more concrete plan, right? Something that's not fly by whatever my hair feels like today.
Yeah, well, absolutely. So I've actually had the opportunity to talk with some of the commissioners about this, and Mary and I have been working together on how do we modify the policy to continue to improve it, right? So I definitely think that we have opportunities to do that, especially under the certification thing. So I think our intent was always to be able to recognize specific skill sets at varying levels. And what I mean by varying levels would be there's variable compensation associated with the different things. So it's not just, hey, I got a certification automatically. You get $5,000. There's many certifications out there that benefit the county that aren't a required portion of an employee's job that would not warrant a $5,000 incentive to go get. So Mary and I are working together to see how can we modify that policy to kind of show the process and then modify the language within the policy so that it's clear that it's up to $5,000. And there's varying levels that you'll see for certifications that occur. And our intent was, when we created the policy, I'll speak for myself, my intent was to say, why we said that there was up to 4 was exactly that purpose, is that there was some certifications that were going to be much less than $5,000. But if we could create an incentive for individuals that work within our organization to go out and attain additional skills that are going to benefit that individual department or office function, then how could we do that in a way that we could incentivize people to do that? There still is a bar that you have to get above certification. And I don't want the certification to be something that's just, hey, I went to a training course and I'm a certified grant administrator now because I've got the certification that said that I went to an 8-hour training class. That training is all part of jobs, the regular part of your job. It's when you go get a specialty skill set. So I think I actually talked with one of Kel's employees, Todd, and was talking about our plan or our plan reviewers. So we predominantly have been residential construction. And so that's where our focus is. That's where our team has expertise. And as we get into commercial development, as we're seeing commercial development come to the county, having our plan reviewers have additional skill sets in some of these more technical areas of commercial development is going to be necessary. So if we can encourage our staff to go out and get some of those certifications to do that type of work, then that's just going to improve the process of our plan review side of things. And we can see that as an example of something that would definitely be less than $5,000, but there still is a certification process to go through where you're tested and we can verify that you have those skill sets and it will benefit the county.
And that it was a desire of that department and a need for the county. And after discussing the issues I had last week, after discussing with Mark, it seems like it's more of a Scribner's error than anything else. A few word changes will allow it to do exactly as he said, that it'd be different for different needs, different desires, and different education levels and requirements. Yeah. That's the issue I saw with it when it was read last time. But it looks like it's going to get fixed and brought back to us, and I think that's going to be wonderful. But
yeah, I think that there's a number of modifications in there, Commissioner Netherland, that Mary has kind of brought to sight, which is great. I think it's an opportunity for us to continue to improve it and to make it more specific and really let it work for the county and the intent why we created it, right?
I think we're lucky to have Mary.
Me too.
She's doing a great job.
So that, Mary, is that all you had for the CIP?
Yeah, that's all I had for the certification one. So my next item was therapeutic courts program manager. That position is going to be vacated in the near future and we're going to need to post it. So we've been working with hiring managers to implement a recommended recruitment planning process. And so we worked with Superior Court to review the position description. Going through the review and analysis, it was discovered that some essential functions weren't necessarily captured in the position description ahead of time. And so we had to update and do a new market assessment. Comps showed that as a county, we were a 7.5% deficit for the market at the midpoint. At this time, I was going to be recommending a 5% increase. So moving from a range of 25 to a range of 27 on the non-rep scale. There are no compression issues. However, implementing the full 7.5% may impact another position on the salary table. We want to make sure we're staying with our guiding principle of parity and equity around the county. So I think to make an incremental adjustment and increase to position in the market, if we could move it from a range 25 to a range 27 would achieve our 5% goal. Range 25 is 61,192 to 74,467, and step 27 is 64,264. Range to 78,189.
And this is based on the addition of duties and work that you found after the fact.
Yeah, most notably around supervision of staff. None of that was listed in there. So this is actually a manager position and that needed to be acknowledged and reconsidered in the market assessment.
I'm supportive.
Okay.
I am as well.
Okay, that was all I had. Thank you, commissioners.
Thanks, Mary.
Morning. I have a request from Lewis County for concurrence on the trustee to the Timberland Regional Library Board. Is the board good with concurring with that?
Yep.
And then I have another thing, it's not on here. This morning I was talking with the weed board coordinator, Kayla. She's just coming on, and we have several vacancies on the noxious weed board. So we want to get a news release out. Is the board good with that?
I am.
Yep.
Thank you.
Can't help but smile every time she calls it the weed board, though.
Noxious weed board.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. So the next item I have on there is a potential property purchase, and I actually briefed the board on this during an executive session, and just wanted to let you know that we are moving forward with that offer. So I'm anxiously awaiting a response from the sellers. We're working with our real estate agent, Richard Beckman, and we got that formal offer in last week and hopeful to get a response. So I will be updating you as I get more of that information, but I just want to make sure that Commissioner Schutte and Trask were aware that we are submitting that formal offer that we discussed during our executive session.
Great.
The next item that I have on there, and yeah, hopefully we can get it moving. I mean, we put an expected closing date of February 15th on there. So if we could get it to turn around that fast, I'm a little, it'd be great if we could. So
Little shout out, if you don't mind, a thank you for Richard Beckman and his professionalism. It's very much appreciated. I know I've said it 10 times before. I'm going to say it again. Where I first came in, we didn't use realtors. Makes no sense, but now we do, and he shows time and time again the value of having a professional in the field doing this with the county. So thank you to Richard Beckman and Associates.
absolutely, super helpful to me too. So the next item that I actually have on the agenda is a Plum Bob Timber Creek sale, a timber sale. So actually got contacted by the Department of Revenue or Department of Natural Resources a few weeks ago. And they wanted to discuss this timber harvest that they're planning right now. So it's a little over 100 acres of land, and it's up surrounding the Mission Creek Correctional Facility in Mason County. Now, this is timber trust land, so the majority of the proceeds that come from these sales come back to the county and the remaining municipal corporations within the county. So oftentimes it's our local schools that are benefit from these sales, as well as the county and our roads levy as well as fire districts, and to a lesser degree, Timberland Library, and then the fire districts, I think, also benefit from it. But I kind of put some percentages in there so you could see where those proceeds come from. The item that they were coming and talking to me about is that they want to put about a 200-foot buffer. This is a request from Mission Creek Correctional Facility to maintain about a 200-foot buffer surrounding the entire facility. And I think it's more for aesthetics for the individuals that are there. So if they're actually out on the yard and they're looking around, that they see these beautiful mature timber trees that are around there. The tough part about it is if they don't harvest it, then we don't get the proceeds from it. But Mission Creek would have to lease that land from us if they want to maintain those trees there. So the Department of Corrections has actually approached the governor to put in his governor's budget the value of leasing that land, which is about $27,440 per year. That money would come to the county on an annual basis and be distributed much like a timber revenue would be distributed. And so the Department of Natural Resources is contacting the county to say, would you be willing to entertain maintaining this 200-foot buffer around Mission Creek Correctional Facility? Now, if the Department of Corrections does not get budget to actually lease the land, then it goes away and they harvest it all. And if the county says, hey, wait a minute, we want you to harvest everything, then Department of Natural Resources would also take that back. So that's a decision that is before the board to determine how do we want to move forward with this request.
When is it scheduled to be harvested, though?
Over the next couple of years.
So we'd know right away this year whether they can afford or will have it in the budget to do it. And if they do have it in the budget, how many years will they have it in the budget? Because if you don't harvest, you don't come in afterwards and just do one little section. That's just not how it works.
Well, with this stand, Commissioner Netherland, you see there, it's currently valued at about $392,000. So it's a pretty significant stand of timber that would remain. These are high quality trees, super tall, super straight, most likely able to be utilized for power poles and the such. So I think that's why we're seeing the values that you see there.
Yeah, no, I know the area well. My question though is still the same. This lease would be for how long? Then would they be able to show it in the budget for that many years? That's
so the lease would stay in my understanding in my conversation with the Department of Natural Resources is that the lease would actually stay in effect until they didn't have it in effect anymore. And at that time we could harvest and still get the proceeds. So the lease would actually just be in place until at which time they no longer wanted to lease that, and then we could actually harvest.
I would rather harvest
well,
all of
again,
it and not lease it. I don't trust the state. As far as I can, well, I just don't. And so I would rather, I don't want to sound heartless, but I would rather harvest now, because who knows what will happen to those trees. And I don't know, I could go on and on and on, but I'll do real short. If I were DOC, I would want that line of sight. So I don't know. I would prefer not to lease.
one of the benefits of leasing though is it's of course long-term. So we get that money, we still don't lose the other. In 8 years, we get our share of it, regardless that it comes in. So that part doesn't bother me because we get our share of our money, and then we still have the ability to sell it after the fact, as long as their rental agreement was for that amount of time to cover it. 392,000, if that's the actual number for just the amount that's there, that is enough to come in and do a singular cut when the time came. Somebody would bid to be able to come in and do that much. You say this comes directly to us, the rental lease? Or is that split up in the same percentages?
It's split up in the same percentages. Any revenue that we receive from this, whether it's a harvest or it's lease revenue, would be split in the same manner. Commissioner Schutte, did you have any questions?
Yeah, just curious. I mean, on the lease side, if it might be worthwhile just asking the other potential beneficiaries. They're slated to get us, decent percentage, and I'd just be curious to know if they had feelings one way or another.
I actually reached out, but in the initial conversation with Department of Natural Resources, when they were talking about the prison, I thought they were actually talking about off of 102. And so then when I started looking at aerial photographs, I realized I was definitely in the wrong place. And so I asked him to send me a map, which I included, I think, in your materials. And so I quickly realized that, oh, this is not the correctional facility that I was thinking about. It's actually Mission Creek. So yes, I can work with our treasurer to see what specific, and what I thought about was which ones. I would definitely wanted to contact the ones that get the most, right? So obviously the school in that area, which would be North Mason School, receives a big chunk of that revenue, as well as I think the next would be the library, and then the fire districts and cemetery districts, and then the hospital districts receive a little bit less than that, but definitely the ones that would be impacted the most would be the schools.
Are you sure when they say local school levy that it means North Mason and not Mason County schools?
I am pretty sure, sir, because as I looked at previous distributions, they went specifically to a district.
Okay.
So I could definitely reach out if the commission would like me to. I think that Commissioner Trask was clear that she's ready to harvest it. If Commissioner Netherland and Schutte want me to reach out first to the local school district at least, and I could ask them about it. There's the sale, the harvest that's going to occur, the remaining acreage that's going to occur, is still a considerable harvest. So there's quite a bit of money in it. So they are, if anything, this is going to be a heads up to the local districts and the other municipal corporations in that area that can receive money through this, that you should be getting ready to receive some money in the next few years.
One of the other things I'm just considering in my head is I know that area very well, and I drive through it. And as they've logged out, it's pretty bare in most of that area now. They're leaving some. This could be beneficial to the community. I'm not completely against it. Don't get me wrong. You don't grow a crop just to look at it, and it is a crop. So I am open to it. I'm just not completely sold. That's all. But I'm definitely would like to hear what the other ones are thinking on it, though, because like you said, North Mason and them, they have a standing there. They're going to live in that same community when they send their bus to pick up the kids. Although there ain't many kids there. That used to be, in case you didn't know, though, that actually used to be our juvenile. Before it was the women's corrections, it was the juvenile corrections.
Interesting. Did not know that. Yeah, and I guess I'm not really passionate one way or another. I mean, I could see obviously the benefit of harvesting it, and if DOC thinks that they're better off having that buffer there, I certainly get that too. And so, just to be clear, if if this is approved by the governor, I mean, are we just weighing in on it just to share an opinion, and ultimately what happens at the state, they'll decide at the state level one way or the other?
I don't believe so. I believe that you have a significant impact in the decision that's made.
Okay.
I asked that same question and they said, no, if you want it harvested, then you actually, that's county timber trust land. So your opinion would matter.
Yeah, I just asked because in the briefing document, it says if they do not receive approval, the entire stand of timber would be included in the harvest. So if it does get funded, you know, does that make our opinion moot, or?
No, I think if we went back to them and said, we would prefer you to harvest it all now, that makes their request to the governor moot. If we allowed them to keep the stand, then, and they didn't get funding for it, then it would be harvested anyway. So there's basically a couple of different pieces there, but I do believe that you as commissioners have the ability to influence whether this is harvested or not.
Okay.
And from what I understand, the governor's budget is pretty tight. And so I don't know whether there's going to be extra funds for very much anyway.
You know, I'm open if the funds are available, and if they're willing to do it. If not, then it'd be a moot point, in my opinion. I want to point out right now, when you drive down to the correction center down by
Sand Hill Road?
No, the correction center here in Shelton.
Eels
Yeah, pardon me?
Hill?
Yeah, down by Eels Hill. It's very different than driving by the correction center up on Sand Hill. Up on Sand Hill, you have a prison that is back in the woods. You see a little bit of it in one section of the road when you're driving. If you take down all the trees on it, it will look like that other one on Eels Hill. So again, that's one of the reasons why I consider you have all those people going by it. Will it hurt their feelings or whatever? I don't know, but it definitely does make a difference.
I actually did get a message from one of our constituents that live up north, and I tried to call him back this morning, but left a message with them. But that's the only feedback that I potentially could receive from individuals in our community in that area. So how would you like me to proceed?
Like I said, I mean, I'd be interested in listening a little bit of feedback from the potential beneficiaries and then revisiting next week.
Agreed.
Okay. I can do that. Thank you. So that's the last thing that I actually have on the agenda. But under administrator updates, I provided each one of the commissioners with a separate agenda item associated with the community lifeline. And let me pull that up here. So I briefed the board on this a couple weeks ago, and this is a request that we've received from Community Lifeline for additional support to open their shelter 24/7 through the cold months, so through May of 2023. Melissa Casey with our public health department has worked closely with Community Lifeline to really hone in their request on what would they need in order to open 24 hours and how would that impact the number of individuals that they are able to serve. So through those discussions, Community Lifeline would be able to hold 35 people or up to 35 people. And it would be 24/7 services because they could actually hire a couple new staff to cover the nights and pay some existing staff additional hours to cover the remaining time. I talked with the city of Shelton, Jeff Knighton, just last week, and he informed me that the city would be, if the board approved this $34,789.84, then the city of Shelton would also contribute $20,000 towards this request. So since we've not provided this during the month of November. The amount has gone down. The total request has gone down, and now the county's responsibility associated with this would be about 35,000. So if the board approves of this, I would move it to our agenda tomorrow, and I would have Kate Campbell and Melissa Casey work with Community Lifeline to get that ARPA contract written up, and if you would give me the authority to sign, I could sign, and we could get that funding to them right away.
So Mark,
Yeah.
we don't have a contract yet,
No, ma'am.
but we have an idea of what how the wording would be. Correct?
Absolutely.
Well, their nights are pretty darn cold. So I would support the 35. Well, 34, 789, 84.
Yeah, I'm supportive as well. I think that number has gotten a little bit closer to the city's number. And certainly the weather of the past week tells us what time of year it is. And so, yeah, I'm supportive as well.
I'm still where I'm at. I'm not a fan without it being equal. It's in theirs. I don't know the total impact. I'd like to see some strings on it for making sure that they're doing some enforcement of their own people. So again, I'm still in the same place that I was the last time we had this discussion as well.
So Commissioner Netherland, if you'd like to maybe meet after our briefings and you could give me some specifics that you'd like to see in the contract, I definitely have an opportunity to put those in there now.
Sure.
All right, so I will be taking this and moving it forward to your regular agenda tomorrow. And then we'll get to work on that contract. Thank you. And that's all I had.
Okay, great. Okay, Commissioner discussion, Commissioner Trask.
So one thing that has been going on for a while is broadband. So it's really not the SCC, it's the FCC. And so what we are doing, along with the Public Works Board, WASAC, Association of Washington Cities, we're asking, and we're going to work with the schools too, we're asking that residents go to the broadbandmap.fcc.gov and record what your number is, your how strong your signal is. So what we're trying to do is show that we're right now it shows that Mason County is not a county that's high priority to get internet or broadband to our homes. And so what we'd like to do is make sure that people get out there and record their numbers to show that Mason County is a little hole in the broadband area. So if people would like to, again, that's broadbandmap.fcc.gov. And maybe we can put that on our website and we can direct people to that too.
Great. Good idea. Okay, anything else?
Nope.
Commissioner Netherland?
Nope.
Okay, me either. All right, we'll move into public health. I do have to step out for a minute, Commissioner, so, but feel free to continue on with public health. I just have to take a quick phone call.
Okay, well, good morning, Commissioners. So we're going to start off with Melissa Casey this morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. We have a quick item. As you know, we applied in partnership with Mason Health and the Shelton Family YMCA to be the WIC service provider in South Mason County, Shelton area. Really, really excited. The state has offered that funding to our partnership. And so we've received a formal letter offering us the funding. We are just asking for permission from the board to accept that funding. And as part of that request, we've asked to move it directly to our action agenda for tomorrow, just because that gives us the ability to go ahead and move forward, start working on our budget, staffing, anything that kind of goes into that, so that we can potentially launch as early as June of next year.
I'm incredibly excited about this. It's good to have WIC back in the South End. We have it in the North, but South End has been lacking. So I'm supportive 100%.
I guess I am as well. Kevin's not here yet, so I'll just say it though. I'm wondering why it has to be on tomorrow instead of waiting for the next one. I know you made a comment on it, but is that because it's easier for budget? Is that a necessity for?
Well, one of the things we received a letter, so really we can't go forward until we have a letter of acceptance. And it's just a weird cycle that we're on because of how we do our legislative piece and when the letter came. So we're trying to get that done so they can look at our budget. We've got a preliminary budget done. We need to go back into that budget, make sure that all of us agree on startup costs, those sorts of things. So we can start doing the MOUs, which is the next big portion, because we'll have MOAs actually between us and Mason Health and the YMCA.
So again, you do believe that it is necessary to get it on for tomorrow then?
Yeah, we need to get it. We need to get going so we get some of the rest of these.
And I am supportive of, I was already supportive of the issue, but I'm also supportive of putting it on tomorrow's, if it's not going to be a major issue, Mark.
Great, thank you. I'll work with Mackenzie.
Thank you.
Okay, so if that's good, our next item is from Casey. And Casey, you're still muted. There you go.
Okay, so we've had a county tech position that's been temporary. It's been full-time temporary since August of 21. And we had secured funding going forward through the Foundational Public Health funding, which is $761,000 per year. So we have the effective revenue to make this permanent or full-time. The funding is supposed to be ongoing, but the state can, any budget cycle, the state can change that. But as of right now, it's supposed to be ongoing. So we'd like to move it to a permanent full-time employee position.
So is there a way that we can put wording in there that if this funding goes away, because that would affect the budget if the funding doesn't come?
So in all of our grant funded programs, that's just an ongoing requirement. If the grant goes away, funding goes away, the position goes away. Yeah, it's something we've lived with in public health for a couple of decades. With this particular piece, just to clarify, so we have the foundational public health funding, which we got. We're looking for an additional fund to come into that this year, but we have it in law that this foundational public health funding continues. And then this particular piece falls under the cross-cutting capabilities, business capabilities of the program. So it's one of the higher priority pieces of foundational public health.
So I agree with Commissioner Trashy, who's asked the same question I was going to ask, because we're seeing a lot more of these, a lot more of them. And at some point, it's going to be hard to keep track of them. Eventually, I'd like for Mark and the other commissioner for us to start having discussions of when we do these and move them over to full-time, because we're going to lose track that we actually put a date or a full-time we put a date of so many years at a minimum, but I'm not going to stand away. I'm supportive of it. I see what we're doing. We don't have anything in place for you to do with it right now. I'm just saying that we need to look at that. But please, again, make sure Jennifer has note, because right now that's the only way that we can keep track of it is by Jennifer making note of it and you making note. And hopefully when or if the issue happens, we're on top of it.
So in June of every year, we get our CONCON deliverables for the next update. And that's when we look at the funding and by position funding. So that gets looked at every year.
Mm-hmm. I meant us as commissioners. That's what, sorry.
Yeah.
So there's already a review, so to speak, period.
Right. And actually, and DOH has improved this process now that they're actually sending us the statements of work the month before the contract comes out. So we have the ability to review the contracts and make any changes that we need to before the actual contract comes to us.
Well, and if there is a downturn, the truth of the matter is you'll have to make decisions on who stays where and what other positions might move into that position. Believe me, I'm aware of that. I just like having it because I keep track of it for the year myself. So please make sure you share that other information with me for the future. But
Yeah, we should probably just make that a part of the regular July update to our funding sources, because that's when our funding always starts is July 1st.
well, that'd be wonderful if I had a list of those positions that were grant funded and how they're grant funded, then I'd be able to keep it for the next budget discussion too, in my own head. That'd be wonderful.
Yep.
I don't think I've ever received one of those ever.
We can make that happen.
Okay. So I guess it's a yes, right?
Yes, yes. Short answer is yeah.
Yeah. Commissioner Trask right now is the chair. So I'm supportive of Commissioner Trask.
I'll support it as well, but it doesn't have, this does not have to go on the agenda tomorrow, right?
No, this we can put on the regular schedule.
Yeah, it's going to be, but it's January 1 is going to be the date of enactment.
Sounds good.
So you're going to put it on the 20th agenda?
Yes.
One of the challenges, Commissioner Netherland, is, when we set up these positions as temporary, right? Sometimes then it's hard to attract somebody to a temporary position. I mean, definitely want to go into it being honest with an individual saying, hey, if the funding, but I think that we kind of deal with that anyway, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm saying no matter what, it happens.
Right.
I've been in one of those downturns, and I remember, even though you have all these positions that you think are scheduled here, they're the ones that go, and other people end up they utilize that funding to keep other people. That's just the way it works. But it's always nice to actually have an understanding with the commission as we go to expend more money for the next budget, knowing how many of them that we have relying on those. And I say we, but commissioners in the past would not even know that. They wouldn't recognize that. They just see it as a position, not realizing that your department brings in a lot of money on their own outside of our general fund. And this helps to show that
Right.
When decisions are being made.
You know, and we actually, it's one of the first statements we do in any interview is we let the applicant know the funding source and the funding schedule on it. So any applicant we get is fully aware of how their position is funded.
Yeah. Well, and it helps us though in a downturn when it comes to dealing with the unions by having all that written down.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference. So we're not just asking to be done for an exercise. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
All right. Is that all you guys have?
That's it.
Okay.
Other updates, Dave?
So, yes, so we do have an update. So we did send out a press release on Friday. We have 5 cases of tuberculosis, active tuberculosis, that have shown up in the community. These 5 cases are not related to each other. So there are 5 individual cases in individual communities of people. So those 5 active cases have been isolated. They are undergoing treatment. We've had one of the cases has passed away, and that was a little over a week ago. A woman between the ages of 40 and 50. One of the things with tuberculosis is it can go, it's not just always a lung disease, it can go into other things, pleural linings, it can go into meningitis. And this particular person passed away from tuberculosis meningitis. So we have removed those folks from the community. They're, like I said, they're quarantined, they're getting treated, not quarantined, they're isolated, getting treated, not a risk. But what we're at right now is following up on all the contacts that those people may have had in the time that they were actively sick. What people sometimes don't realize is in order to spread tuberculosis, you have to actively be sick. So it's in some ways it's different than COVID. If you just have latent TB, it's not transmissible. So we're going through those communities, getting testing done, finding out who the contacts are, and then getting people treated as necessary.
David, I'd like to ask a little something from you on that, if you don't mind. I was surprised to find out that even people in the medical field don't understand the risk of death through contracting that meningitis. They were surprised that there was a death based upon it without it, or based upon it until I mentioned that, and then that made sense. But I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind taking the time, although you gave a press release, sometimes the press don't realize how important this actually is. If you can put it on record right now, perhaps what some symptoms are that they should be looking for, because this could be a really serious thing in specific communities we have right now, but not just symptoms, but maybe where they should go, what they should do.
Sure, certainly. So some of the things to keep a watch out for, if you have a constant cough, and weight loss is another one that goes with that cough. Like I said, it doesn't always go to the lungs, but most people, if they're going to convert from latent TB to active TB, it's going to be the lungs. That's the first thing we're going to notice. So weight loss, cough, night sweats are another thing to watch for. It's going to look, it's foreign born. So if people are coming in from outside of the country, that's another thing to watch for. It's some of those things that should set off the alerts for a provider. When someone comes in, they're presenting with a cough, they start running down the checklist. Those are the things they should look for TB. One of the things we're doing is we're taking extra special precaution with anyone under 5 years old that's in those families, and beginning treating them immediately. Because one of the things that can happen with kids is it can go from an exposure to meningitis without going through that lung phase. So we're making sure that the kids are getting treated right away, right off the bat, and then doing our contact tracing from there on out. But there are a lot of concerns. It doesn't pass in the same way that COVID does. You need a much longer exposure. You need at least 24 hours in close contact with a person, cumulative. And where COVID was 15 minutes cumulative. So it takes a lot more to transmit tuberculosis. And of those people that have latent TB, only 5 to 15% are ever going to convert to active TB. So the amount that convert is small. The seriousness when they do convert is large.
Now you're receiving some help a little bit from the state on this one. What should these people do if they consider, and I think you also, one piece you left out, I think you told me a while back, wet cough is actually an important aspect of the cough. If that is, I'd like to make sure people know that. But where should they go? Who should they call?
So they should call their primary provider. We're going to open up a hotline, and we'll be putting out a press release on that. So the hotline won't be it'll be coming directly to us. So you'll be getting directly into the health department to have those questions answered. And then we can make recommendations on where they can go to get testing. We're going to start testing on quite a few people in the community. And if I can just touch on that for a second. So testing is going to be a blood draw to get a quantiferin test. If they're positive on a quantiferin test, and most people are coming up negative, but if they do come up positive on quantiferin, we're going to go ahead and get a chest x-ray as well. So, and they can do that through their private provider. If they're concerned, they can go to the private provider and just have that conversation with their own doc about tuberculosis and what their risk may be. People that have traveled abroad, I know when I was overseas in Iraq, I got tested about every 3 months when I got back, to make sure that I was clear of tuberculosis, because I was working in some very difficult neighborhoods. So we're going to be putting out a lot of information. You'll be seeing us on Facebook and through the county website, putting out a number of things. We actually have a professional PIO now that's working with us from Department of Health. We have a team coming in from Seattle that's working with us. That's all they do is tuberculosis. Typically in Mason County, we get 1 case a year, maybe. 5 cases unrelated is a remarkable time for us. And for us, it's all hands on deck. We pull our nurses off of other tasks to work specifically on TB so we can get our arms wrapped around this as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Hey, anything else?
Boy, that's enough, Commissioner.
Oh, you never know. You're always just full of it.
Well,
Wait, let me rephrase that.
Yeah, I would say for folks, really, we are in a season right now where influenza A it's on a vertical increase. So People just take care of yourselves. Don't let yourself get overly tired, because that's when influenza A, RSV, COVID, all these things really get to you, is when you let your system run down. So good nutrition, exercise, taking care of yourself, being as stress-free as possible really helps to take care of this. And get your flu vaccine.
Yeah, that's
And
coming
if you're
from.
sick, stay home.
Yeah, exactly. If you're sick, please stay home, because we don't want it.
Right. All right,
Thanks,
Mr.
Dave.
Shooter's back, but I think we're ready to move on.
We are.
Morning, commissioners.
Good morning.
I think Richard and Mike and our road ops team all need to go home and rest up and take Dave's advice. But we're here, ready to rumble. So this morning, commissioners, we have a couple of math challenges for us all. And first up is our first draft review of a latecomer agreement presented and prepared by Harbor Custom Development Incorporated. And this is for the sewer trunk extension that was constructed in association with the Olympic View and Olympic Ridge projects up in Belfair. And what you have before you is a draft agreement that has been reviewed by Richard and myself, and we gave a once-over with Tim Whitehead last week and have reviewed this with Mark as well. The basis for the cost is our Mason County Code outlines what is eligible for reimbursement. So essentially, the developer has constructed this trunk line. A portion of that trunk line they would need to construct as part of their development to serve it. Another portion of it is oversized and will serve future customers up in the Belfair area. So the first math problem is to calculate what portion is the developer's and what portion is able to be recaptured or reimbursed because other folks, future customers, are going to connect into that trunk line. So we've estimated or calculated that to be 7.5% is the share that Harbor Custom Homes is taking in terms of capacity, and the remainder of that capacity is available for other future customers. The cost for the project, what they had submitted at the time we prepared the briefing was 1.244 million. And on Friday, after the briefing materials were submitted, they had an updated amount of 1.312 million of total eligible construction costs. Based on that eligible construction cost, we are calculating that a latecomer pro rata share is $430.35 per ERU. And a couple of other things to point out, if I can share the screen here real quick, commissioners. On the draft agreement itself, so there's some language here that in our last meeting with Harbor Custom Homes or Custom Development, they said they would be striking. So this language here will be struck. The eligible construction costs, I plugged in the updated number of 1.312 million and the 7.5% share, the proportionate share for the developer. And then I'd like to point out the term of the agreement, which is 20 years. And this is per RCW and our county code. And there's some language here that allows for extending that 20-year period. but it primarily relates to an extension if for some reason the county enacted a moratorium or something that prevented new development applications to come in that would have, again, prevented a recapture of those latecomer fees. And I think that is about it in terms of the some details about the agreement.
And so can you walk us through how this works, Loretta, when somebody wants to come in and connect?
Sure.
Like, so in terms of here's the amount that they pay for our capital facility charge, and then what this latecomer agreement looks like.
Yep. And these are preliminary numbers at this point, because we still have our costs to account for. Let's see, maybe I've got the wrong spreadsheet up here. Too many fun spreadsheets. No, not that one. Well, essentially, I guess this will show us what we're looking at. But basically, let's go back to my happy little map that I had up here. This is a depiction of some of the properties that would potentially connect and make use of the trunk line that was constructed by Harbor and that is currently under construction now. So let's say that I had a piece of property right here and we're developing that and wanted to connect into that trunk line. I would then be looking at however many ERUs or what my capacity of that line is that I want to occupy. And based on the ERUs, I would be paying $430 roughly, I'm rounding up here, for the latecomer charge. And then what we're estimating at this point is that we would have a new CFC because the value of the overall infrastructure is increased. And the CFC would be increased to around $12,674. So the county would be collecting the $12,674 to retain in our coffers. We would be collecting the $430 per ERU to then pass on to the developer to recoup the costs that they oversize the pipe, basically. And that's per ERU.
So Loretta, what's the number below the 555?
So this was a number that our county code is based on an ERU being 155 gallons per day. And we were just taking a look at it. So typically we're designing for a higher amount just so that we've got a design buffer and some capacity. So the design amount is typically the 200 gallons per day per ERU. And what we're actually sending or what we're seeing as a typical is really about 149. So folks are using under the 155.
So that's a high estimate of 200.
Yes, it is a high estimate. And you can see what that does in terms of what the rates would be as well. Now, the bonus of using the 200 for the developer is they are able to more quickly recoup their investment, right? But a potential downside of that also is that so then they recapture it, but maybe we still have capacity in the pipe. And so we stop collecting that latecomer fee. And then folks that connect way late would not have to pay that. So we've got kind of an equity issue there. or potentially an equity issue. Richard, any other 2 cents to add on this?
Well, just
Or,
that maybe
or,
a little-
or straighten me out on anything that I may have misspoken about?
No, just to add clarification to the 2 different ERU numbers there, the ERU 200, that is what is the designed capacity of that line. And the 155 is what is codified as standard water consumption for the Belfair area, or ERU. And Loretta's right, our average right now over the last 3 years is about 149 gallons per day per ERU. The 200 calculates in expected I&I over years of use. That's infiltration and inflow, leaky pipes. It's just accounting for it that way. That's all I had.
The existing customers that are on Belfair, we utilize the 155 to calculate their number of ERUs, which then coincides with their rate as well as their CFC charge.
That is correct.
Do you mind?
Any other questions, commissioners, about the draft latecomers agreement or procedure or?
Just comment.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, is it okay?
Yeah.
Now's the time? Okay. So eventually, we've had discussions in the past. We're going to have to talk about ERU differences. An ERU in other places is much different than what we had. Now, back in the day, 10, 12 years ago, they were, 320 gallons per ERU in other areas. It's all been coming down. It's all changing. But we've talked about separating our fees to where commercial, retail, and stuff like that may have a different rate, and it may be 200 or something like that. So that's a wise move to look at the differences in the numbers, because if we're going to stay static, that's one thing. But if we are going to start to adjust things, that's something that has to be considered. There is no way. The one bummer for this whole thing is there's no way these people are going to get the money back based on this, because the amount of things that are going to get built over the next 20 years and the area it's going to be built is a blow-weighted capacity that we've created, just like that ERU rate. But with that being said, it's not up to us, I guess. It's more up to them. If they're willing to do at this rate, who am I to argue? We'll take it and keep the lower rate and keep the amount inexpensive for those that want to hook up. It's beneficial to accept this rate, even though I think it's way off for the people that want to hook up to it. So my job being to take care of them first on that, because it's not our debt. I would be very much in favor of moving this forward as it sits, as they've designed it.
And Commissioner Netherland, would that be at the 155 or the 200?
It has to be 155 because we don't have anything else.
Gotcha.
So we'd have to change our code and stuff before we can start doing things like that. And I don't know that we want to open and latecomers once it's established. I think we don't touch it ever, in my opinion. So again, if they're kind enough to accept this as their number, I think in 20 years they're not going to get their money. But that's not my problem. My problem is to get it as cheap as I can for those that want to hook up to it in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I support this. I mean, I think, first off, Richard and Loretta, appreciate the effort that went into, putting this together for us today, and Mark, your input as well. And so, given that our code is somewhat prescriptive on some of this, and, some of the back and forth that went along based on, the points that support.
Yep, so am I.
Okay, thank you, commissioners. And this draft agreement is drafted for the chair to execute. Is that?
I had no issue with that.
Okay.
Same.
Yep.
All right. Richard, anything else we need to nail down before finalizing?
No, I don't think so. Just looking at just make sure we get the right numbers. That's all.
And then, yeah, we've been going through and combing through with the developer's engineer about the numbers and justifying those. The other thing I forgot to mention, commissioners, our code does specify that the engineering costs are capped at 10% of the total eligible construction costs. And what they've presented to date is just under 10%. So they are meeting that test.
If only we had done that at the beginning of the construction of the sewer. Oh, what a better world we would have been in. I don't know if you remember, Loretta, but they hit us with 8 million after everything was done, and there was no provision to protect us from that, from the past commissions.
Yeah.
That was after everything, 8 million.
Yeah. Okay, well, great, commissioners. We will get this finalized and then bring the final form back to you for one more briefing. And then we will be requesting action on the 20th if that is agreeable.
Sounds good.
Great. Thank
All right.
you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, next up. We have the annual CPI increase for our water and sewer utilities. And commissioners, we presented the budget and briefed on what our code says in our resolutions. And this year, the April CPIU is 9.1%. And commissioners, you asked us to come back and take a look at what would a 5% increase look like, somewhat similar to what you enacted, I believe, for the health department fee schedule. Is that correct?
Fields.
I'm sorry?
It was sports fields and stuff.
Oh, okay, okay.
The 2 to 5.
Yeah, yep. So what we presented, let me stop this little screen share. Now pull up, or maybe Richard, you've got her handy.
Which one are we pulling up? The
materials that were submitted for the briefing.
okay, let me.
Here. Let's see, I may have this right here. Okay. I'll share this. All right. So what you're looking at here, commissioners, what Richard did, he pulled together for the different water and sewer utilities, what our expenditures are, what our revenues are, and then allocated those or by a percentage. So you'll see both the dollar amount for the utility and then also what percent of the budget that accounts for. And then what the surplus or the deficit looks like for each utility. And we know that Belfair and Russellwood, we've been providing funds to balance outside of utility rates. Beardsco and North Bay have been operating within their utility rate base just fine. But you'll see here that if we were to reduce, now Richard, this is based on the 5%, correct?
Yeah, that's a 5% increase.
Right. So we're cutting pretty close on Beards Cove in terms of balancing. And then North Bay, we're still maintaining a pretty good surplus. But what the picture doesn't show here is that what our future capital needs are. And so it's wonderful in my mind to have these balances, but we also need to be salting a little bit away so that we make sure that we can meet our future capital needs to keep these utilities in good shape. And Richard's put together, now I'll stop sharing. And if commissioners like, Richard can do a quick rundown of his crystal ball of future capital expenditures. And as you know, some of this we've got a better handle on. Belfair, we just took a pretty good look at what our capital needs are. North Bay, we know that we're doing a facility update that will give us a much sharper picture. We've got some things that are obvious right in front of our face, what we need to do in North Bay, but we know there's a lot more that a facilities plan will help us to identify. And the same with Russellwood and Beards Cove.
If you want, I'll pull that CIP up.
Yes, please, Richard.
Be it.
Success.
All right. And this is North Bay. Let's just start at Belfair because I know this one we had just been through. And I mean, as you're well aware, there's a lot of expense looking at us. And particularly, I mean, we're lucky with Belfair. We did a lot of the heavy lifting right at the beginning with the extension and with the facility and general sewer plan. I feel a lot better about that. It gives me a direction and a path forward for the utility. And you can see like in 2024, these are we're purchasing that third pump for pump station 1 right now. We plan to actually put it in and have it in permanent in 2024. You can check out all of these things. They're pretty self-explanatory. We've only got one feed forward pump left to rebuild. And then there's a number of items right there in a row, replacing some sensors and probes and upgrading the programming and the computer processor with a redundant computer processor, which doesn't exist at this moment. And then after that, we're, replacing membranes and other worn items for a little while and getting ready for our flow permitting for the reclaimed water and what we're going to do with it at either Sprayfield expansion or not. That'll be decided within that engineering report and permitting phase. But you can see this goes out a number of years, a lot of stuff, pump station, future pump stations to serve. We got the freight corridor pump station is still on there. There's some items that are on this that are way out there as far as I know, Old Belfair connection, Southern connection, stuff like that. So that's basically Belfair. Now these other ones are ones like, Loretta said, there's some things we do know, because it's staring us in the face, and other things that we are, I wouldn't call them wild guesses, but pretty educated guesses with some reasonable numbers attached. So I'll go to North Bay next. Right away, update the general sewer and facility plan. That way I can get a definitive plan on what it looks like moving forward.
I'm still looking at Belfair.
Are you really? That's weird. I'm on a different page now.
Just refresh your share, I think.
Yeah, this is a night. I've lost it.
So I think if you stop sharing.
Oh, yeah. I can't get out of this screen. This is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
嗯 。
Oh, no, poor Richard. He says his computer just died. Yeah.
So
Let's see if
Commissioners,
I have-
something, while we're waiting for him to come back on, something I'm looking at though is, I understand what we're talking about when it comes to these numbers and I appreciate it. My question is also though, at what point are we gonna look at some of these things? Because if I'm not mistaken, currently for North Bay, we have a almost $2 million ending fund balance, and at one point we can keep increasing the prices. But you know, what's right for the community that's around us and the other communities that we've seen. A while back, if you remember, I went while we were talking, we were getting certain numbers, but I went and pulled up their current rates, and there's still quite a bit of differences. And so we can keep raising the price, and we can keep finding ways to spend the money, because you know the amount of things that I spend is direct correlation with the amount of money I have. But at some point, we got to ask ourselves what's right for the people there. And like I said, there's currently a unless I'm mistaken, I'm going off of numbers, I'm looking for preliminaries, about $2 million ending fund balance in North Bay. I think we got a 225 or 250 in the Belfair water. I'd like to see what there's a water system that's right next door to it for Lynch Cove. I mean, literally, you can't even tell where Lynch Cove starts and Beards Cove starts. I'm curious to see what their rate is and how competitive we are to them. Those are just my 2 cents on where we're at. We can always use more money,
Actually,
but it's the right thing to do.
yeah, Commissioner Netherland, I asked that similar question when we were going over this stuff, and I'm going to address North Bay first, right? Because I think North Bay is the one that there's a plan out there, Loretta, for an additional 400 connections coming in.
Yeah, so not only do we have a relatively good fund balance, Commissioner, we're also expecting lots of connection fees.
Yeah. But
But
in order to expand the facility, it's going to cost us probably $8 million.
right.
And those connection fees are only going to bring in 4. So I think that when we look at these numbers, sometimes it is, I think that as we look at North Bay, that's what I would consider to be a somewhat healthy utility, because we actually are planning for that future. We are collecting additional funds to do major maintenance and repairs, and we're not waiting until something breaks. So our other utilities that you see, and I think Belfair is one of those. I think that Beards Cove is another one that scare me a little bit. They're aging utilities. They have piping in the ground that is very really old, and we're going to have to replace some of it because it's old. What'd you call it?
Yeah, the AC pipe in yes, Beards Cove in particular, the water system. Yep.
So there's going to be some pretty significant expenditures coming up, and the intent of, in my personal view, the intent of a utility rate to continue to fund those utilities in the future would be to accumulate a fund balance that allows you to do that type of work without having to go back out to the customers or potentially look for alternative funding sources, which absolutely every time we have an opportunity to, we will look for grants. We will look for additional funding to come in and help us out with some of these things, because I don't think that we're going to have enough within plans. And that's the part that I think is super important. And I know Commissioner Netherland has talked about this before, is having an up-to-date facility plan. So what do we expect in the future? And I think that's something that Richard was just touching on when he was talking about, I think it was North Bay. In 2023, he had budgeted a $300,000 expense to actually update that facilities plan.
Any luck getting back online, Richard?
Oh my gosh, I swear.
I actually can share it. I brought it up. If it's the same one.
Good.
Do you want me to share?
That
Yes,
would be
please.
great.
I'm challenged.
It's all right.
There you go. That's a thing of beauty.
So what you don't see on here, Commissioner Netherland, is that potential expansion of, 400 additional ERUs coming into the facility and the expansions that are going to take place. And I think that I think when we were running through it, just not general numbers in my mind, with capital facility charges that we bring in, it'd be about $4 million. And you still have a balance to make up there.
And again, I don't disagree with any of that. There's that old adage, there's, so many different types of lies. There's statistics. What is it? Lies, damn lies, and statistics. I'm not saying that our stuff is bad. What I am saying is we could maybe do better, but we don't have to look at it. We just collect the money, bring it in, and put the number up, then we'll just keep spending it accordingly. You don't have the money, you find ways of getting funding and other things like we've done at Russellwood and other places, but that's not taken into any of the equations. So just having statistics, we can justify everything. I'm not saying that there's no charge that we can't justify. I'm just wondering if it's time to look at some of the others and realizing that every utility around us has to justify what are they justifying their cost at? And what are they making it work? Because our citizens are just as entitled to a fair, a level playing field as they are. Not just, because we can charge more. So I would love to see the full thing, what it would look like, and try to find ways to bring it down if we're that far off from our neighbors.
When we move forward with the general sewer plan update, for North Bay, is that part of that process, is evaluating the rates and sort of the long-term plan? I mean, obviously plan is in the title of the thing that we're funding, but I mean, is that an element of that plan where we look at sort of the rate structure and all that, or is it just purely focused on the capital side in terms of, future projects?
It typically has a rate component along with it, Commissioner, but it can be as big and broad brushed as we've got $20 million worth of future capital and we have 1,000 customers, and that means the rate needs to increase by X. So it can be that simple. Unless we scope something more detailed.
Am I the only one getting all that feedback?
No,
I'm getting a little bit too. And I think too, as we go through this, and I don't want to delay the other discussion points that we have for the other systems, but this is super helpful information, because I mean, these are tangible projects that we should be, when we say what's our legislative priorities, like we should just be pulling from this list for 2023 and saying, oh, we're gonna do a capital budget request for I know this is a 24 project, but replace DNO and TSS probes, replace control screens, upgrade programming, replace CPU and that's $355,000 worth of projects that we should be handing off to our legislative delegation to help us with. I mean, that's why we have the lobbyist. We have 2 legislators now that are actually customers of this system that should feel a little bit of incentive to go and get state funding into it. And so I want that to kind of start becoming our mindset for when we look at these lists, as kind of Commissioner Netherland was hinting at, like, when do we start doing these projects, or what's the, it's great we have it on the list, but what's the plan for getting them funded and underway?
All right, if I might jump in real quick, I've had our legislators contact me and say, where's our request? We need those capital budget requests, and we don't have them in yet. So let's do them. I think these are perfect examples of things that we should be asking for. I think my concern is when we say we can find the funding, that's usually reactive and not proactive.
Right.
And so I would rather be a lot more proactive and get definite plans as to when we're going to do this. I mean, I see them here on the screen, but I don't know. It's different having it on paper, and then action is different, I guess, than black and white.
Commissioner Trask, that's a perfect example of, remember a while back, we had that discussion about Parks and Belfair and the idea of Sand Hill and the expansion. I want it badly, without a doubt. But in my opinion, the way we should be doing it is really working everything we can to get that money, get it allocated first, and then we start to put it all together from our end, because then we can start coming up with a different amount of match compared to trying to do it all and collect a tiny bit of match. I think it's the only way that this size county can afford to do some of the major projects. So I completely agree with what you just said. I think we need to start doing it, and the same with what Commissioner Schutte said. But we start somewhere, and I think those requests is a great start. Even if we're doing grants through other different things, getting requests to them, they can still help us, as you already know from what you guys have done in the past. They can help us to get it even in those different departments. But we have to have them out there.
Can't get a yes or a no unless we ask.
Actually, if you don't ask, the answer is no.
Is no, yes.
So
Commissioners-
100% agree with the recommendations from all three commissioners that we need to put some of these things in as legislative requests, and where we can get funding, absolutely get funding for them. But also recognizing that it's important to prepare to be self-sufficient, right? I mean, if we don't get funding for some of these things, and we need to do some of the capital improvements, then we're going to have some fund balance in order to do some of this work, and preferably before it breaks down. So with the sewer system, I would hate to have a sewer system break down and not be working and require us to do emergency repairs. I think that Justin actually provided a pretty good example just last week of some of the major maintenance associated with some of these types of systems. And I think that's another important point that we all have to think about, is that some of these systems are built differently. Their cost of operations are different. Their age is different. So the cost of receiving service from them is most likely going to be different. There's got to be some tie into it, and justified, for sure.
Yeah, and Mark, I think the conversation needs to be both and. I mean, I don't want to give the impression that we're having either we get this funded through the state or somebody else, or we don't do it, or we want to sacrifice these projects, for reduced rates. I don't think that's appropriate, and that's why I've been hesitant on the rates conversation broadly here about going too far away from what it is to actually meet the cost of doing business. And so that said, I think we need to embrace a mentality where we're doing both, and we're both going for funding, and we're trying to preserve a healthy fund balance in the system, because there are things that the legislature isn't going to be able to fund, or we're going to need to do local match, or things happen, right? And so I mean, but we can't have this sort of wait until the last minute mentality and expect these systems to just be sufficient based on what the people are willing to provide or have been providing. I don't be willing is the wrong word, because I think some people are upset, but the reality is these things are expensive. They have needs. It's we're going to have them in perpetuity, and so we need to be able to do both and not either or.
Exactly.
So Richard, do you want to continue to move forward on this discussion?
Yeah, it's one thing is I just want to add to it, I guess, right here is, we have 3 different wastewater facilities. 2 of them are reclaimed water facilities. So then there's not many of those in the state. That's just something to keep in mind, that they're very sophisticated. They treat to the highest level possible, and they're expensive to run. And they're in small communities, which makes it even harder.
Even more.
Just wanted to add that. That's all.
So I have North Bay up here. Do you want to talk about which one's your
Yes.
next one? Russellwood?
Well, I mean, let's go to Russell. Let's see. I'll put mine up because I can manipulate it.
Can you see that?
So you can see on right away. Generally, we are well, we've got our work set out for next year with some source water quality, and we're gonna be doing some testing. We've got some engineers that are gonna be involved to give us an idea of how best to deal with the iron and manganese at Russellwood, and that's ARPA funded. And then we've got some system valves that we're replacing next year as well, just 2 of them. And they average $10,000 to $11,000 per valve replacement, just to give you an idea. And those are for the water system. And then then the next year, right out the gate, we want to update our plan or get a plan. And you can see we haven't done that reservoir. It hasn't been inspected for nearly a decade. That's pretty important to do. Pressurization improvements. We've got pumps to purchase there. One every other year for the 2 pumps, and then just replacing isolation valves, because that way, in case there is an issue, we can isolate a smaller part of the community to take care of the issue and provide good service to the rest of it. The wastewater treatment plant, I haven't even dived into that really yet. We're in pretty good shape there. We are currently undergoing a lot of testing and review with ecology, because that is a saltwater discharge to Puget Sound, and it's going to have its own permit. Currently, we are able to meet every parameter without alteration to the facility, and it's pretty much built out around there. So I'm not expecting any expansions. Any questions on Russell?
Richard or Loretta, could you also maybe send us something that shows which ones are already funded, like where I know we've got some money dedicated from ARPA to improvements. And so if you could maybe let us know which ones are already paid for, that might help us see the biggest picture if possible, I guess.
Yes.
So Richard, Loretta, 15 years ago or so, Harstein Island made him a request to take over their own system. Have we ever had anything like that from Russellwood?
We have not, Commissioner.
No.
I'm just wondering if it's something we should ask. Just, measure it with their board, just make mention if they would like to look at it for consideration.
We certainly can do that.
For sure. Yeah, Beards Cove. All right. So you can see 2023, those 2 projects, the blow off install and isolation valve replacement, that is ARPA funded. It's part of the AC pipeline replacement. This is work to do ahead of time. The AC pipe, it's old, it cracks, it breaks easy. But we've got no way to isolate smaller sections of Beards Cove due to a lot of operating isolation valves. Excuse me. So that cost is replacing a bunch of those valves ahead of time, so we can get ready to replace AC pipe without taking the whole Beards Cove down for I don't know how long, days at a time.
Now,
so that
over the years, we've gone after grants for doing these replacements and stuff. Are we currently reaching out for grants now on any of this?
No, we haven't actually, because this is something that didn't exist until just a week or so ago. And so I've just been, like Loretta said, some of these things we know, some of these things we know are good things to do, and some of it I just had to, dig and look at other different water systems, what they had scheduled, and dig back in the past to see what we had done and not done.
Yeah, perhaps we can start on some of that, because in the past, for like installing meters, all like that, we were going after grants everywhere that we could find. for these water systems. Those, as you know, those water grants are different than some of the other ones. They're just not, it's a whole different pool.
Right.
It
No
is.
pun.
I would also even think in the bipartisan infrastructure law, there's a lot of funding for these types of projects. So not just, casting a wider net than just state level funding.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And I think Beards Cove is a great utility for those applications, commissioners.
Yep. And you can see on this one, most of the expenses replacing that AC pipe. I mean, it's about $1 million a mile.
Is it phased like that just based on the cost? Like if you were able to secure, $1 million by 2026, would you do both the project for 26 and 28, or is there some other reason that it's spaced like that?
It's just phased like that, just to, spread it out, the cost out.
Well, and also for constructability as well, Richard, right? We don't want to have all of that neighborhood torn up at once. As Richard mentioned earlier, we also want and need to isolate different stretches of the distribution system during construction. So it's a combination, Commissioner.
Okay.
In my mind.
Yep. And there again, haven't inspected that reservoir. It'll be a bit more because it's a big reservoir, very tall, and they both require divers. And then just resurfacing it on the outside and keeping it up to good maintenance practices.
So you've gone through all the utilities, I think. Do you want to go back to something else, Richard?
Well, I'm done with the CIP, I guess, unless there's further questions.
I think, Richard, maybe just in general, our philosophy of how we've built rates, commissioners. So we've built rates essentially living within a budget and minimal increases with just cost of living or the CPIU. And as you know, we have not really taken a comprehensive look at the rates for each utility until just recently. We've just recently kicked that off, and we don't expect to have that completed here for another 3 months or so. But that said, what we've done in preparing our budgets is we know we only have so much money. We have not requested a rate increase, and we're living within that. And we know that there is so much more that needs to be done. So if that kind of paints the picture, we're living within our budget, if you will, and not going out saying we need more budget. We've just used the CPIU as that budget.
Well, but I think I heard more than one person say it, is we want to be more proactive. And I do too. But right now, I mean, the budgets we build to zero out are very reactive. I mean, it's just the way it is. You have to wait for something to happen to be able to replace it, because you just don't have the money in your budget. And that, that isn't how I like to do it, but we're surviving, and I guess that's it. We're more reactive than I really like.
Feel comfortable with, yeah.
Right.
So Richard, in your experience, I mean, you've worked at a number of utilities. What's the path out of that?
I think our problem is they're so small. It's just they're really confined to a number of customers. You can see, I mean, just if we had that one spreadsheet, we could share that again. It actually has the number of ERUs below it too, and they correspond really. I mean, you go to North Bay, there's like 1,300 ERUs. We're doing great. You go the other direction and Russellwood, it doesn't have any room to grow. You can see the Yeah, number of ERUs, second line from the bottom. I mean, the more customers you have, the better off you are. I do like that this actual spreadsheet, because it helps represent some things that like Belfair. If you look at the wages and salaries and personal benefits, they're a lot less than they are in the other utilities. And that's what you were hoping for when you designed it. It's supposed to not have a whole lot of operator interference to run it. And it doesn't. But what it does need is some improved programming and sensors, because those are what are doing the job of the operators that it's not requiring. But yeah, the path forward is, what we've been doing really at Belfair. When I got here, when that plant started up in 2012, it had 4 feed forward pumps. And those are large pumps that move that are totally responsible for moving that wastewater, all of it, forward throughout the process. When I got here, we had 1. The other 3 were done, and we had 1 pump, and it was running on a seal fail. So to me, it was like we're a heartbeat away from shutting down the whole town. Now I think we've got 2 pumps that are installed. None have seal fails. We have a 3rd that's on the deck and ready to be installed. We have 1 left to deal with, and we've done that on a very reactive budget, just by saving money where we can and reinvesting it where we can to take care of those critical items. And I mean, that's what a lot of this is we just need to, we've been improving our operations, being more efficient, but it only goes so far. I mean, it's going to really take a combination of a lot of things to get completely out of this.
Yeah. Yeah, and commissioners, you nailed it. It is a combination. So some of it is our rate base, and certainly we've had great help and assistance from previous capital budget requests. Commissioners, you're allocating ARPA funds, your support in approving prior budgets for capital projects, the use of REIT to help us get ahead in some of our utilities that you've approved as well. So I definitely don't want it to sound all doom and gloom, because I'm very proud of the headway that we've made in recent years. And certainly that's been through your leadership as well, and helping make that happen. So definitely want to continue on that path all the way around. Make sure that we're providing the best and most cost-effective service to our customers.
So let's kind of get back to the discussion that we've had here in terms of we're talking about 5% versus 9.1%, right?
Yep.
And so do you want to run them through what you're representing here, Richard?
Well, okay. Yep. This is showing, well, actually, this is going to show that there's a 5% increase, a rate increase, and that's reflected in the service charges row. And that is the only revenue stream that's shown on here, is just monies from rates. It doesn't include beginning fund balances or any special. That's just what we expect to get with our rates. And the number above it, total O&M expenditures, including debt, is my goal of what a rate would cover. And you can see that yeah, we're short in Belfair, but if you looked at Belfair's last year, the 416 ERUs, that's what we had last year. It was the service charges were considerably less. So the growth is the right direction for Belfair. We're expecting to have all the multifamily homes on by the end of May, early June. So that is calculated in to show that our service charges went up about $200,000 for that year. So that's what I'm showing there. The rest of this is just pretty straightforward. after that, I mean, you know, we're gonna bring in expected just under 300,000 in Russellwood, and we got about $480,000 worth of expenditures. And that's with a monthly rate of 118.14 for sewer and 44.32 for water.
So the intent of
And
this
then-
graph was, yeah, sorry. The intent of this graph is really to just to depict what our normal operating costs are, right?
Yep,
So
this does not
this
have
is-
any capital.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yep, normal, what we'd expect, normal charges versus normal operating expenses.
And that's a 5%.
That, yep, and that's at 5%. And then I have another one that shows the 9%.
Sorry, I feel like I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing because I can't find the one you're looking for.
Can't hear you, Loretta.
I think it was in a spreadsheet tabbed format, and when it saved as a PDF, maybe it didn't bring all the tabs.
Let me. Okay. If I can, I'll bring it up. I'm gonna try. Hopefully I don't get kicked off. here.
You don't get bopped off.
Is that there?
So that's the 9.1%.
You got it.
Yep. Yeah, so of course it doesn't affect Belfair's numbers. It's still at the 96, but then you can see how we still have a deficit in Russellwood, and we're doing a little bit better. I think we're bringing in like 8,000 more at Beards Cove and close to 80,000 more, I think, at North Bay.
Okay.
Then again, like I said, I hate sounding like doom and gloom, you know, I really do, but $15,000, it's like one valve replacement at Beards Cove, and North Bay, that's a pump station rebuild. It does not take very much to use that up again if you wanted to be more proactive.
So Richard, are you able to go to the next tab, the 5% and the 9.1%? So does that have both of them on there?
Can you see that?
No, sorry.
Nope. Dang it. Let me.
Are you going to make your computer crash again?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I'm afraid.
I don't have this one, so I'm sorry, I can't help you with it.
Oh my God. There we go. I'm gonna stop share. I found it. And I will pull that other one up again and see if I did it again. Okay.
I've got it up, Richard, if
There you go.
there you go.
There. Can you see both now?
Yes,
Mhm.
All right.
thank you.
So those are the differences.
So we currently supplement Belfair about 1,250,000 out of REIT 2 and 0.09 funds. And Russellwood is supplemented by about $75,000 a year.
Yep. And like I said, this doesn't include any beginning fund balances because what I wanted to hopefully show, and I guess that's what my goal is for what a rate would cover in a utility, is everything except the capital, because sometimes people don't build for a long time. And then what would you do? You gotta have some way to pay for it back. So that's why it would be my goal.
So you are looking for us to do what? What's your ultimate goal?
Well,
It's to allow them to increase the rates by 9.1% as opposed to 5.
Right.
yes. That would be my ultimate goal, but yeah.
It's not a popular thing.
No, I know.
Fun to say.
I hate saying it out loud.
So before we get into that, none of this includes any increase to Belfair, correct? And so
Correct.
kind of like, what's the plan there? Because I think the last time we all spoke about this, there was some interest in seeing the conversation on rates include changes to Belfair's rate. And so if you're asking whether it's the 5 or the 9, would that also be the request then to apply it to Belfair?
I would recommend, yes, that we apply whatever CPIU to Belfair as well as a first step. And then again, look at everything comprehensively when we get our rate recommendations wrapped up in 3 months.
I wish I had a crystal ball. And so it would tell me, what the future holds. I've heard lots of different economic predictions and they swing from one end to the other.
Yeah, it's a tough, tough crystal ball time for sure right now.
It is.
Yeah.
But I think that one thing that we don't need a crystal ball for
Yes.
is recognizing that we are seeing increases in the cost of operating these utilities. Whether it's increases in salaries and benefits associated with the workers that are maintaining them, or whether it's the cost of getting equipment and pieces and parts to maintain them.
I don't think those pieces and parts I don't think that price is going to drop at all. I know with the Public Works Board, people are coming back to us for increases because of the cost of supplies. So that's definitely not going to go down.
I've kind of been in the minority on some of this, in other areas where we've discussed rate increases, and I suspect I might be there again. But I don't see a path forward that doesn't adjust the rates based on our past practice. It's just a critical moment, and and I would like to see it applied to Belfair as well.
I would not disagree with that.
Commissioner Netherland?
I'm still in the same position I was. I think we need to look at some of our surrounding. We have to keep in mind, we'll always be able to justify spending more. We'll always be able to justify whatever rate increase we want to make. But I do think that we need to look and see what some of the surroundings are and then try to live within what others are living within. We're asking just too much. I'm looking at a 124 at that rate. What are we looking at with the 9%? In 129, so $130 a month for sewer. The taxes itself has gone up. The average home in North Bay there is probably paying a little over $4,000 in property taxes a year already. You start adding all these things up, and you're looking at $500 a month. That's a rent. So I'd like to see further discussions on what's actually needed and where we should be in comparison with other places. Are we operating these things right? If others can operate it so much cheaper, is there something we should be doing to operate cheaper? So absent of that, I'm still not sold on the giant increase. As for Belfair, I'm not going to leave you guys out hanging. I'm the one that brought that forward the last time, so I'm not going to leave you guys out hanging. Just know that I'm still in favor of that. There's a necessity to move forward with Belfair as well. We did the best we could, and we did well by holding their rate for 10 plus years. And instead of complaining about it, I'm going to say thank you instead.
Well, I think there's just a difference too, because Russellwood, you have water and sewer. So you have to keep that in mind while looking at the rates. And regardless of what we do, it's not going to be a popular decision anyway. So is it an either or is there something in between?
You know, I'll just speak out loud. I only just prepared these two examples, and so I could prepare any example if you'd like.
Well, I think another or would be closer to looking at a different methodology. I don't want to stray too far afield on the methodology and make sure that, and when I talk about that, the CPIU, that we have something defensible, right? And we could use a different CPIU that might be more representative of a rural community, but that drops it to, I think last time I looked, it was around 8% as opposed to the 9.1.
Yeah, I think when you have inflation at the levels that we're seeing, everything is going to come back high, regardless of what metric you're using. If you're using,
Yep.
you know, that if you're using CPI, I don't think it matters what part of the CPI you're using. It's all super, super high.
Now, the city of Shelton is both water and sewer, correct?
Correct.
They do have water and sewer utilities, yes.
And how many are used?
That I do not know. At one time, Richard, you had I don't know if we know what their total customer base is, but I know that Richard prepared a table of comparing surrounding water and sewer utility rates.
Right. I think I remember seeing that. It was back a few months ago.
Yep. But the tough thing is, as Richard also pointed out, we're not necessarily apples and apples, right? With our water reclamation facilities, North Bay and Belfair. And so it's tough to find a similar facility of a similar age, similar customer base, all those things factor into what the rate is.
Right, just off, we got two of our facilities are located on top of the hill, which is completely different everywhere else. I mean, we spend a lot of money pumping sewage to the top of the hill. So yeah, that there's a main difference that our neighbors don't have. I mean, city of Shelton has a place. It's down at Walker Park, down at the bottom of the hill. Same with Centralia, Olympia. That's where they put them. We have additional costs that most people don't have because we're at the top of the hill, and then they're hooked to water reclamation facilities instead of a Class B plant that, you know, is just putting it out to the clam beds. So I mean, there's some definite differences. It's really, really almost impossible to compare apples to apples in this industry. If you can get somebody who has light technology, they're going to have a much different customer base. It's very, very hard to flesh this out and get a very true and accurate comparison. that's worth something.
And Commissioner Trask, to your point about could we, look at something different? Is it a 9.1 or a 5? You can see the differences right here. We're talking, for example, Beards Cove, a difference of, Richard said, what, $8,000. Looking at just either 5 or 9, and we could certainly present other scenarios, but we're kind of dancing around.
Right. Well,
Dancing
and I think if we, commissioners we all have a calculator too, so we can kind of figure out what the difference would be for ourselves. It might be a little off, but it might be close. I think that it's such a big jump between 5 and 9 for me, that if we looked at, somewhere in the middle, and this is just me talking, look at maybe a 7% or something like that to see. I would be interested to see it, and to include Belfair in that. So I would be interested to see where we're at if we did do a 7 or
Just as you're working through that, just out of curiosity, Commissioner Allen, would you support the 5%?
Well, I wish I could say yes to that. I'm not thinking I would stand against it, but I think we still need to go through the process that I was asking for. Because even if it's just doing 5%, you're looking at North Bay's rate. I don't think it's realistic or comparable to everybody else around us. Because we could keep arguing the differences between these 2% stuff here. At some point, though, it's a critical mass and a critical failure point. And I think in one, I'm not saying that it's the same for all of them. That's one of the other problems. We're treating it all like it's the same medicine for every disease we have, and it's not. It may be easy to justify it by saying it, but it doesn't make it accurate. So I can't say that I would be in favor of it. Doesn't mean I would vote against it. You guys worked with me long enough. I have times where I still stay with you regardless, because I think it's important for the whole group to look good and stand together.
Okay, so here's kind of what I'll say. Just save maybe everybody from doing a ton of math. Commissioner Trask, could you live at 5?
I could live with 5.
Okay. I'll go with 5. I think, putting 5, a 5% increase puts us in a tight spot in Beards Cove. And in North Bay. It doesn't really, move the needle in the other 2 spots, but I think having a rate increase in Belfair for the first time in a decade is important to change the trajectory there. And so, I think we should do the 9.1%, and I think we should continue to, make these, investments. But that said, just to move things forward, I would do the 5%, and then, really, we need to really focus on, figuring out how we're going to be a little bit more proactive with our rate structure going forward. This gives everybody a little bit of predictability heading into 2023, and then, I don't want to waste that opportunity to actually get some consensus on how we treat our utilities from the rate perspective, and then put together a plan of how we're going to go out and fund the work in the upcoming years.
Right, I would agree. I think we need to be more proactive instead of reactive, and I feel like that's what we've been doing with much of the services that we provide. And so, if we can come up with a good plan and stick to it, I would support that. I would love to see that happen.
People have to recognize that, they're going to pay for it one way or another. It's either going to be through, a rate increase, or it's going to be from us transferring money from the general fund, which is also their tax dollars, or it's going to be coming from the legislature, which is also their tax dollars. So, you're going to be saving, $5 or $10 a month, depending on, whatever system we're talking about here, in 2023. We've already foregone the 1% property tax increase in our budget this morning. So at some point you got to pay the piper on these things. And, we have to recognize what the reality is. If there's a better way to do it, I'm all ears. But, the fact of the matter is, for a decade, we held the line on Belfair's rate increases. And so we have to figure this out. But the cost goes up, regardless of what the rate does.
And there is still the discussion that could be had eventually of what we did with the parks. Was it optimum? No, most of the time it'll cover everything, but when tough times come like this, it keeps things from happening that would be drastic. We're agreeing for this year to go at 5% for this year. That policy was not a bad policy that Mark and Diane came up with.
I think it's a little bit different, though. I mean, I think, you're already supplementing those parks with general fund dollars. That's how they're majority funded. And then, there are some usage fees that go above that, and that's what we're capping there. These are enterprise funds that we're having to backfill with other fund sources that also are tax dollars. And so it's just, I don't think that's, we're on this pretty heavy today, apples and oranges, a little bit, but these are enterprise funds, and the goal is to get them to be somewhat self-sufficient. We do that through rates. So it's a little bit different than parks usage, in my opinion.
Well, and we do it more than just with rates, though, because we do it in many other different things. You guys haven't been around long enough to realize how they had a shift. Belfair wastewater paid for a huge amount of stuff when they were going over the budgets for staffing and stuff to cover other projects in the very beginning. When I first got elected, I forced them to bring forward the real numbers of what it was showing, and that changed things a lot on how it was billed out. So I do know just from past experience, it's more than just the simplicity of one little change. It's all how we look at it.
I don't really know what that means, but I think, that doesn't mean that was the appropriate approach either. I think that's why you're saying you had to make some changes, right?
No, it was at the time because we found they were just shifting things to cover it onto the new construction debts. So we had people that were working in North Bay being billed out of Belfair. They just, it's all in how you looked at the workload at the time. Just being around long enough to have seen that, I knew what it looked like and what possibilities there may be still. But it's going to be smaller now. We have a whole different crew now, and the people we have now, I'm sure, look at all that where they didn't back then.
Yeah, I think we want to make sure that if somebody's working in North Bay, that's the fund that they're being paid out of, and we're not getting away from that. I think that presents its own set of issues.
I agree. And I definitely don't think our folks are doing it. I'm just saying that I just been around long enough to have seen what it looks like, that there are things that are changeable and movable.
Yeah, no, and I think my point was I think we need to do things the appropriate way, versus that previous experience that you had here. And then I think that there's a cost associated with it doing things the right way.
Agreed.
Okay.
All right.
That give you enough to move forward?
I think so, commissioners. I'm going to do a quick recap and make sure I've got it straight. So 5%, and we're applying that to all of the utilities, including Belfair. And I'm going to, should I have this drafted as a one-time this year?
That's what I heard.
Yeah, okay.
My only question is going to be, though, you're going to have to look at the codes and make sure that we're not stepping over the top of something that's codified. If it is, we need to cover that in the verbiage to make sure that we don't walk into a buzzsaw with that.
Yep. What I would like to propose, actually, commissioners, is that we're rescinding the previous resolutions and creating a replacement resolution.
Well, but if you make clear that it's only 1 year, that'll force us to create the proper resolution by next year. I
Right,
have no issue with that. I think that's actually a smart move, but just the other commissioners know the danger of that. We will have no resolution for pricing and we'll only have 1 year to put it together if we do that. I'm okay with it. I'm just telling you, if we rescind all the other ones, because they're codified. So,
correct.
Yep, understand.
So this would be action on the 20th, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so Loretta, given kind of the conversation we've had today, in your research over the next week, can you bring that element of it back for just not action or decision, but for some discussion next Monday, so we go into it eyes wide open for the
Yep.
20th?
Yeah, absolutely. Kelly's actually got two versions ready to roll.
Great.
So we've got that prepared, commissioners, and can get that before you. All right.
Okay.
I think that is it on that item.
Great. Anything else for us?
Oh, probably, but everyone's probably tuckered and hungry.
Yeah. I had just one quick thing. I had gotten a couple of notes from some constituents over the past week about political signs still being out in different areas and in the right of way or near the right of way. They specifically mentioned agate, and then not necessarily our area, but on at the SR3 log yard roundabout, there are still a couple out there.
Okay.
So I don't know what we normally do when there are stragglers like that, if we just let nature take its course or what, but just wanted to put that on your radar.
Okay.
Well, and if you see that there are some from a person in the Zoom room, could you let me know and I'll go pick them up? I've been asking people to let me know where they are so that I can make sure that they are not out there.
Okay.
I was going to say, it probably makes most sense if we were to contact them first, ask them to remove them. If not, then do something.
Yeah, and that's, I think, typically what our practice is. Sometimes we've put out a little public announcement, friendly reminder.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, and sometimes you
That
don't
way.
remember where they've been put.
What's that?
right.
Sometimes you don't remember where they've been put or where people have put them.
Yeah. Yeah, and when I heard about this, there wasn't anything, it wasn't specific. If it was you, I'd have just told you. But they weren't specific in who's out there, and I don't really get out agate way much, so I don't really know. Okay. Commissioners, anything else for staff?
Yeah, thank you for the hard work this last week has brought about. I appreciate it. I've had many different conversations, but very few were complaints like we had in the past. And I want to say thank you for that, because most are just asking questions or trying to figure out how to get things done. And that's to be expected. With that, I have what I need to ask about. Currently, we go up Trails In, and then we turn on Trails In Drive, and we do part of that supposedly, but we do not go down the paved Razor Road. Is that on anywhere? Can you look and get back to me and tell me if it's anywhere on our spectrum, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3? They're saying it hasn't been done in years, so I'm just curious where it would sit on that, please.
Okay. We can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, big thank you to the people out working. They've been amazing.
Yeah.
Appreciate that so much.
What a unique weather event.
Mhm.
I mean, I was at Wallace Nealon and there's hardly any snow. And then I hear stories about staff, having over a foot at their house. And so I can tell you that I live just off Shelton Springs Road, and what is that, a mile down the road? And I think I have probably 6 inches in my backyard. So yeah, what a crazy.
We had almost 3 feet in Tahuya in certain
Wow.
areas up there. It just was crazy all over. You just don't know.
That is a lot of snow.
But people, one of the things that I'm sure the other commissioners do the same, but since we are live and online, this may get out there to the press. Please understand, we have 650 miles of road. With that, we have to take care of the main roads first, because when it comes to getting law enforcement or emergency medical, the closer we can get them, the better and safer it is for everybody. You can't, please don't expect with 65,000 people that we can get to your driveway. for everything we do. That's a lot of roads to get to. And as soon as they get a lot of these main roads done, before they can get to phase 2, it snows again. So they have to go back out and hit number 1 again. That's required by what we've asked of them as a commission in the past, but also in the protection of our community. We would love to be able to put somebody on everybody's door and get all of it done. It just doesn't work that way. So you're on a road with 6, 10, 15, 20 people. That's not the same as being on a road that is accessed by 1,000 or 500. It's just not. And I hope that the community would understand that. And if the press adds anything, please add that. That's how we can protect everybody. You live in Washington State, it may be beneficial for you to actually own a set of chains. These days they have plastic ones that work like zip ties, very cheap, but also a 4-wheel drive. It's a choice. But the county can't expect it to get to every single driveway. And instead we need to be thankful for all the work that they do get done.
And Commissioners, if I may, just a real quick thank you also to our utilities folks. We're always road focused, as we should be, but holy moly, our transfer stations, we do our best to have those plowed and open and available, because that's when a lot of people are counting on being able to come take care of their solid waste needs, right? Weekends. And same thing with our water and sewer utility operators. They're navigating all those back roads up to the top of the hills Richard was talking about earlier. And they're showing up, they're there, they don't have a choice, they've got to be there, rain, sleet, or snow. And so big hats off to our utility folks as well.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anything else, Commissioners?
Nothing from me.
Nope.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Mark, anything else for us?
No,
Great.
thank you.
All right, Commissioners. Well, we've finally reached the end of our agenda. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded, we adjourned. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and the motion carries. And we'll see everybody tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Take care.